comes rum coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer. Send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over, over there, over there, over there. Send the word over.
Hey everybody, this is Joshua LITRELL. Thank you so much for tuning in today to the Veterans for Cannabis podcast. I'm extremely excited about today's podcast because, well, not because of the guest. We actually don't have a guest today. You get the great esteemed Joshua LITRELL as your guest, right? No, not because of that. It's actually because there's been some really great information come about on post-traumatic stress and the disorder, or most of the time I don't even like to consider it a disorder. And a lot of you all that listen to this show know that the veteran community hates that word. So post-traumatic stress is just what we refer to it as. So there's a great company that we have done a partnership with called Strain Print. It's out of Canada, and this company is a data collection company. Now, when you think about data collection, you think about typical data collection, right? People are getting your emails, they're getting your phone numbers, they're getting your address, and blah, 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 right? To fill your inbox, your mailbox full of junk. Well, that's not who this company is. Strain Print, as I mentioned before, is out of Canada, and they're a company focused on the cannabis industry. They're focused on collecting data to back up what we've been trying to say, or to completely knock everything out of the water on what we've been trying to say over the last 20 to 30 years as far as cannabis goes, and utilizing it as a medicine, right? So Strain Print put together a really, really great study over the last 12 months or so to focus on post-traumatic stress and to see, was, first and foremost, cannabis a useful option and useful opportunity for people to help them medicate themselves to reduce the symptoms associated with post-traumatic stress? That's a really, really great question, and it's something that we've been saying anecdotally for years now. And I know when I first founded Veterans for Cannabis, the organization, back in 2014, 2015, the whole focus was to fight for those that were suffering from chronic pain and those that were suffering from post-traumatic stress. Those were the two things that I thought we could have the most amount of quality of life improvement in our veteran community. Now, I just kind of fell into it and found out that it wasn't just our veteran community that was suffering from chronic pain and PTSD. It was also civilians as well. So I was blown away at the reaction and response we had to the civilians in a room that heard me speak the very first time I spoke in front of a House and Senate committee. So I was really excited about the impact that we could have in our community, whether it was veteran, civilian, it didn't matter. Our community in general, with the potentials of cannabis and what it could do for a great alternative to what was being forced on us from our physicians. It's frustrating a lot of times when a doctor wants to just throw a pill at our issue and call it done. That's not who we are. That's not who we are as human beings. All we're trying to do is get better. Now, I'm not saying pills don't have their place. I think all of you all who've listened to our show over the last year have really begun to understand that, look, Veterans for Cannabis is there, and we advocate for the actionable alternative choice. That's what we really want. We just want that choice to utilize cannabis as a medicine. And that choice oftentimes is coupled and comes in conjunction with using pharmaceuticals, right? So we have to find that delicate balance. But anecdotally, means that everything we're saying is not backed up by science and data. It just means that it's based on observations, right? That's what anecdotally means. So anecdotally, we've been saying that cannabis works extremely well for PTS and chronic pain management. We've said that. I know that personally. I know that many of you all on the listening side of this know that personally. And I know that many of you all who are listeners that may not be patients that have family members that are benefiting from cannabis know that as well. So we all know it anecdotally, right? But where is the black and white data? Well, Strain Print has really put that together over the last year and is trying to help us. And what I mean by that is, look, they're not there to sway the data. They're going to report black and white what the data says. But if the data tells that cannabis is useful in treating PTS, then that's what they're going to report. It also would be the exact opposite. So if cannabis shows that it is not useful in treating PTS, that study would show it as well. So I want to hit really, really quickly the highlights, and then we'll go into, exactly what this study was put together as, how they did it, the patient data sets that were utilized, and what were the overall outcomes. So some of the highlights that we're really focused on to begin with are, first and foremost, inhaled cannabis. It says that it acutely reduced PTSD symptoms by more than 50%. Wow, that's a big number. 50% reducing PTS symptoms. Holy cow. And acutely means right then, quickly, one or two times, it works immediately, right? Higher doses of cannabis predicted larger reductions in anxiety and intrusions. That's really, really, really beneficial because there are a lot of states right now that are opening up cannabis as a treatment option to their patient base, but they're trying to limit it. For example, Florida, very specifically, has these, well, I hate to say it, but asshole senators and representatives that are trying to put a cap on the THC amount that's allowed in the medicine. So so where they're saying 10% is the amount of THC that you cannot go over is what they're trying to get when they introduce legislation to cap the THC percentage, right? And they're trying to do it in Georgia. They're trying to do it in some states out west as well. What that means is, let me put that into really, really down and dirty terms so you guys understand it. So it says that if you needed 1,000 milligrams of acetaminophen to reduce your fever, they're just basically saying, no, you can't have that. We're saying 500 milligrams is a maximum that you can give everybody. But we know 100% that 1,000 milligrams is useful in reducing that fever for a child, for an adult, whatever it may be. But the legislative body of these senators and representatives up there who are trying to put the caps on it, they're trying to put a cap of 10% THC in there. So it would just basically be saying the same thing, that they're trying to put a 500 milligram cap on acetaminophen, even though your patient needs 1,000 milligrams. That is just asinine to me, specifically, to think about. But then I have the patient side of me that thinks that these people are playing with my life. And they are. They're playing with your life. They're playing with our communities. They're playing with our overall wellness and well-being as human beings. Nobody should tell us what the cap is on any sort of medicine. The only thing that should happen is a physician should be able to tell you what your recommended dosing is. And that physician should also be able to listen to you as the patient, find out what's working for you, and make adjustments either up or down to your medicine to help you manage your issues better, right? That's the only person who should have any say whatsoever in my body, your body, our community's body, is the physician. Now, you may disagree with me on a lot of things, but I don't think that you as a listener would disagree with me that the legislative body should have no say whatsoever in regulating my medical health. That absolutely should not happen. The only thing they should regulate are the requirements around the education, the patient treatment, the things that are, things that they should have their hands in. They shouldn't have their hands in medicine. If they're not a doctor, and even if they are a doctor, stick to legislating. Don't stick to trying to be a doctor to everybody. Really stick to making laws. And hey, here's an even better one for you: taking laws off the book that are draconian and asinine. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now, too. That brings me back to exactly what I was talking about. Higher doses of cannabis predict larger reductions in anxiety and intrusion. So what that means is that with a higher dose of THC and potentially CBD, they were seeing a better result. That's counter intuitive to exactly what these representatives and senators are saying, right? So this is really great for us, and it gives us some black and white data to go back and say, hey, state of Florida, you guys have no business trying to cap our THC and the amount of medicine we can put on our body, and here's the data to support that. So that's that's a great highlight, I thought, out of this study that was really beneficial to our community and our states and potentially our country as well. One of the other highlights is that dose used to manage anxiety increased over time, indicative of tolerance, which, hey, we all knew that our bodies build up a tolerance to things. Just like if you're taking vitamin C every single day, your body gets used to it, and sometimes you got to take a little bit more of it. But you also take a couple days off of it and don't take it, then you're going to get back to that original point or somewhere close to it. It works extremely similarly in the cannabis industry. So we know that if we utilize cannabis for 4 weeks straight, the 5th week, we're probably going to have to use a little bit more. But we can also take 3 or 4 days off and try to use alternative treatment methods, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's exercise, whether it's working out, whatever it may be, to help us manage our issues, let our bodies reset, and then we can go back to that baseline level of cannabis use. So I thought that was a great highlight, and that goes back to what I was originally saying, that people in this study were open, they were honest, and the study itself is open and honest. They are telling you if it's working or if it's not working. So we got a great highlight in the first one I talked about, where it's reducing PTS symptoms by more than 50%. That's great. But it also is saying that, hey, you're building up a tolerance to it, and you have to take more of it over time. So that's a negative, right? But they're reporting both sides of it. That's what has to happen. A lot of times with these studies in the past, they only reported the negative sides of it. They wouldn't even report the positive results at all. And in fact, there are a lot of studies that were funded by the federal government that completely left out the positive effects of it because they didn't want people to see any positive benefits behind cannabis back in the day. So I'm really glad to see that a company is putting together a really, really thorough study and really bringing together the information in a reportable fashion and reportable form that we can help prove the points that we've been saying. Another highlight is that cannabis did not appear to improve or worsen PTSD symptoms in the long term. Now, what does that mean? That means that acutely, right now, and immediately, all the issues I'm having, it works for. But if you're using cannabis and cannabis is your only option for treating PTS, and you do it for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and you're not doing anything else to help yourself out, it's not doing any good. I'm Joshua Littrell. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast. It's not doing you any good, right? So what does that mean? That means that you can't just rely on cannabis to be your only option and only fix, if you will, for the ailments that you're trying to treat, right? We know that it comes in conjunction with a whole lot of things, and especially PTS. I will be the first one to tell you all that cannabis is not the end-all, be-all, solve-all, the God medicine. We know that it's God's medicine, but it is not the God medicine, and it solves everything, and it fixes everything immediately on its own. It's absolutely not the case. This study really points that out, that over the long-term use of cannabis with PTS, sometimes it actually even got worse. Now, how can that happen, right? Well, think about it this way. If you've got somebody that's really suffering from PTS and they are stuck in the house, they don't feel like they're welcome anywhere, they get really stuck in their heads, and they're homebound, and they're stuck on the couch and just in their heads, and they can't get out of it. Well, utilizing cannabis, especially a couch-lock cannabis, right? Something that's a real heavy, sedative cannabis type, and you're sitting there, you're stuck to the couch, you're going to keep doing that over 6 months, 12 months, you're not going to get off the couch. You're not going to get off your ass and do anything, right? So why does that matter? It matters because you have to do other things in conjunction with the cannabis use. That's what we're trying to really preach from the Veterans for Cannabis standpoint. When people ask us who we are and what we do, we really